With the Super Bowl and Olympic Games in full swing this month, this video sponsor Raycon are offering 15% off their essential open earbuds during their Go for Gold sale. These have become a central part of my exercise routine. They're sleek, smart, and way more comfortable than your average earbuds. They actually make exercise enjoyable, which isn't easy. Go for Gold with Raycon's essential open earbuds and get 15% off when you visit buyraycon.com/skillupopen. Scan the QR code on screen or stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Gamers. I was in a good mood this morning. Woke up all bright-eyed and bushy-tailed, ready to face the day, and there I am munching on my Fruit Loops and drinking my prune juice when I reach for my phone and the very first thing I see is reporting from Jason Schreier of Bloomberg that Sony had shut down Bluepoint. And at first I was like, hang on, no, that can't be right. There's just no way. This must be a mistake. I mean, it's Bluepoint, literally the most successful remaster/remake studio in the history of that thing. Responsible for the remastering of Uncharted, the Nathan Drake collection, the visually stunning Demon's Souls remake, and what I think is their finest work, the Shadow of the Colossus remake. A rendition so deft that it forever enshrines and makes accessible one of the greatest games ever made. How on earth do you look at that studio and go, nah, shut it down? Like, how does that actually happen? So here's what we know. Basically nothing. We know that Sony is shutting the studio down since they've confirmed it in a response to Bloomberg, but that response is literally just, thanks for the memories, Bluepoint, see you later. So what happened behind the scenes? Well, again, we don't know, but we do know that the studio had been working on a live service God of War game for some time before Sony cancelled that project last year as part of their live service purge after the failure of Concord. And look, I don't know that the world needed a live service God of War game, to be honest, but I think we can all agree that Bluepoint probably shouldn't have been the studio to make it. Get someone else to do that shit. Bluepoint played an important role as preservers and revivifiers of some of our most cherished games. And yeah, I'm sure the team eventually became interested to work on their own stuff, but did they really want to make a live service God of War game? Or was that something handed to them from on high during Jim Ryan and Herman Holtz's now infamous reign of live service terror? Anyway, that live service project was cancelled a year ago, and since then the studio has apparently spent the year trying to figure out what they wanted to do next, and apparently they just never found it. All the while, Bloodborne is right there, and it literally would have been mountains of free money for Sony, but they thought that it'd be better to shutter the studio rather than to get them on that project or any other. And here's the rub, I think. Something here doesn't add up. I do wonder how much talent drain occurred at the studio over the past few years as Sony had them working on a live service game, and as the studio spent the past while spinning its wheels. Did enough key talent leave for Sony to think that the only path forward was shut down? Honestly, don't know, but these are the questions going through my head because it's just so baffling. Like, it reminds me of Xbox shuttering Hi-Fi Rush developer Tango Gameworks. The difference there is that they just released an acclaimed hit that was widely praised by fans and Xbox executives, so the closure felt particularly cynical. Difficult to not feel as cynical here though, given the pedigree of the studio and the fact that we really did hope for all these years that they were secretly working on a Bloodborne remake. Now, that's probably never going to happen, and more importantly, a once great studio is no more. Very, very sad to see. So Bluepoint is no more, but Highguard developer Wildlight is hanging on, at least for now. Last week we covered the news that an undisclosed but significant portion of the development team were laid off, and as you might expect from news like that, even the most hopeful for Highguard's future have quickly abandoned ship. What once reached a peak of nearly 100,000 concurrent players less than a month ago has cratered to less than 2% of that, sitting at a peak of just 1,600 players at the time of writing. One big question we've always had about this thing is, where the hell did this studio get its funding? I mean, we're talking about an LA-based studio of over 100 people, many of them industry veterans who you would assume wouldn't be working for no minimum wage. How then did the founders get the money to build this studio and pay these people for some 3 years before the game was even out? Well, just recently we got at least part of the answer. A new report from Stephen Datillo of GameFiles says that developers of Highguard Wildlight Entertainment had been secretly backed by Chinese conglomerate Tencent. Citing, quote, sources familiar with the matter, end quote, GameFiles specifies that Wildlight was supposedly backed by Tencent's Timmy Studio Group, responsible for titles such as Call of Duty Mobile and Pokemon Unite, but details including the amount and duration of that funding were not shared, nor was the reason for keeping all of this under wraps. GameFile notes that neither Tencent nor Wildlight had previously disclosed the arrangement, and neither company responded to requests for comment at the time of the report's publication. So this is honestly kind of weird. Like, there's no reason for this studio to not disclose where their funding comes from. Tencent funds a whole bunch of stuff in pretty much every gaming market you can imagine, and we know about many of those funded projects, so why the secrecy around this one? Things got even weirder this week when inexplicably Highguard's website went down for like a few days. and no one from Wildlight would confirm that it was going to come back online, leading many to suspect that this was the definitive end of the studio. Just yesterday though, the site came back up with the announcement that the game was getting new content. Not much, but something. The game is getting a new base type to run around in, as well as a new raid tool. That's it. No new characters or weapons or game modes, just that stuff. It's hardly enough to get people back into the game, and I also think it's not enough to qualify as a sign of life, since surely that content was developed months ago before the studio affected its mass layoffs, and we still have not heard a definitive, defiant yorp from the studio that they're in this for the long haul. So until we get that, I'm not going to be holding out too much hope for the future of Highguard. Turning to some even worse news now, AI and the way it's ruining our video game hardware. We spoke about this last week actually, where we discussed Valve's decision to delay the release of their Steam Machine and Steam Frame owing to memory shortages and price hikes. But it turns out these issues are also impacting the humble Steam Deck. Steam Decks have been quickly selling out in both the US and Canadian storefronts, and this is a problem that Valve themselves have since acknowledged, updating their website this week with the following disclaimer, quote, Steam Deck OLED may be out of stock intermittently in some regions due to memory and storage shortages. Steam Deck LCD 256GB is no longer in production, and once sold out will no longer be available, end quote. As such, at the time of writing, both of these models remain unavailable in the US and Canada, though for the time being, it's still possible to get them in the UK and Australia, so if you're in these countries and you've had your eye on one of these things, I'd suggest snatching it up while you can. The component shortage is also making things quite difficult for both Sony and Nintendo, but recent reporting from Bloomberg suggests that things have gotten so bad that Sony may be postponing the release of the next PlayStation, and Nintendo may be considering a price hike on Switch 2 consoles despite earlier hints that they might resist these pressures. Here's what Bloomberg had to say, quote, Sony Group is now considering pushing back the debut of its next PlayStation console to 2028 or even 2029, according to people familiar with the company's thinking. That would be a major upset to a carefully orchestrated strategy to sustain user engagement between hardware generations. Close rival Nintendo, which contributed to the surplus demand in 2025 after its new Switch 2 console drove storage card purchases, is also contemplating raising the price of that device in 2026. People familiar with its plan said. Sony and Nintendo representatives did not respond to requests for comment, end quote. So price hikes are never good, and hopefully Nintendo can find a way to avoid those that don't involve some new bullshit subscription service to increase margins, I don't know. But the news that Sony is considering a delay to next gen, that's interesting, and I don't know about you guys, but I'm kind of okay with console generations getting longer at this point. The incremental increase in graphical fidelity from one generation to the next is getting smaller and smaller, and I don't think anyone is looking at their current PS5 or Xbox Series consoles and thinking to themselves, this thing is a piece of shit. I mean, they may be thinking that if they have an Xbox, but definitely not if they have a PS5. I am joking, people. Okay, everyone relax. Point is, it still feels like the current console generation has barely begun. I know that it has. In fact, I know that we should be getting to the tail end of it. But graphics technology hasn't progressed so far that the need for new hardware is abundantly clear. If anything, games like Ghosts of Yotei and Death Stranding 2 show that current gen hardware still has a tremendous amount of life left in it. Oh, and just in case you thought this was all about consoles, think again. If you're a PC person looking for more storage and you're thinking you might be able to save on cost by picking up an old HDD instead of the increasingly scarce SSD, well, I'm afraid to say that you may soon be out of luck there too. Tom's Hardware reports that US-based Western Digital, one of the largest digital storage manufacturers in the world, has already sold out of hard drives for 2026 as a direct result of those looking for more cost-efficient storage. Chief Executive Officer Irvin Tang said in a recent earnings call, quote, as we highlighted, we're pretty much sold out for calendar 2026. We have firm purchase orders for our top 7 customers. We've also established long-term activities with 2 of them for calendar 27 and 1 of them for calendar 28, end quote. Man, at this rate, we're going to be going back to using floppy disks, which to be honest with you, would be kind of cool because those things were always super fun to play around with. Zoomers, you guys missed out, but millennials, you know what I'm talking about. A quick lightning round to finish off, and while Highguard's player count is in free fall, another hero shooter has soared to new heights, that being Deadlock, but also Overwatch, which is the more interesting one to talk about this week given its tumultuous history. Because yeah, after years of questionable decisions, the game has made something of a comeback after its recent major update, which added 5 new characters to the roster, with another 5 on the way, alongside a rework of the game's UI, rewards, and approach to storytelling. As such, it set a new Steam concurrent player count record with over 165,000 players on the update's launch day, and has since eased to a more stable average daily peak of around 115,000 players, over triple its previous daily average of around 35,000 players on Steam prior to the update. Now, of course, these numbers don't account for the loads of other people playing through the Blizzard launcher, or on consoles, but yeah, definitely indicative that things are on the up. Both Ed and Austin have jumped in for the first time since the transition to Overwatch 2, and they say they're having an absolute blast, particularly with all the new characters and game modes. I've actually reinstalled it too. I really don't know why I did that, to be honest with you. Kind of like drunk texting your ex at 3 a.m. Seems like a good idea at the time, then you wake up the next day filled with regret, knowing that you now have Overwatch installed on your hard drive. A truly sickening feeling. 1 month from their upcoming Street Fighter tournaments, Capcom has slashed the prices of their pay-per-view tickets after much backlash from the community. Back in September of last year, Capcom announced they'd be adopting a pay-per-view model for their Capcom Cup and Street Fighter League, with tickets costing approximately $27 a piece, or $40 for both, which is actually more expensive than the game itself. Good news is that they've since come around, and tickets will now sell for just $6 a pop or $10 together. That's more reasonable. Hasbro and Wizards of the Coast have shut down Atomic Arcade, the developer working on an upcoming G.I. Joe game. The studio was founded back in 2021 and was staffed by over 100 industry veterans from AAA studios the world over, including Epic, Bethesda, Eidos Montreal, Naughty Dog, Rocksteady, Bungie, Treyarch, and many more, according to the founder Armis Kirshen. They entered pre-production on this AAA G.I. Joe game in 2023, and all we know about it is that it was centered on the character Snake Eyes. Surprisingly though, despite the studio's closure, the project hasn't been totally canned. As Hasbro has told a few outlets, quote, "The Snake Eyes game is not cancelled. The team is currently taking time to evaluate the path forward for the game. While decisions haven't been finalized, we're committed to providing updates as soon as we're able," end quote. Honestly, not sure how much of a market there is for a G.I. Joe game in 2026, but good luck to them, I guess. I hope those laid off manage to get back on their feet ASAP. Saddened to report that on the 13th of February, former Sega president and console designer Hideki Sato has died at age 77. Sato joined Sega in 1971, where he led the development of the SG-1000, the Sega Master System, Mega Drive/Genesis, depending on where you lived in the world, the Sega Saturn, and the Dreamcast, serving as the company's president from 2001 to 2003, before leaving Sega in 2008. Sega's statement reads, quote, "His leadership helped lay the foundations of Sega, and his contributions had a significant and lasting impact on the entire gaming industry. We will always remember his contributions to our company, and all of us at Sega extend our deepest condolences as we honor his memory," end quote. This week also marked the tragic passing of one Shutaro Ida, who on February 10th lost his battle with pancreatic cancer at just 52 years old. He was an industry veteran who worked at Konami for nearly 2 decades as a programmer on the Castlevania franchise, later becoming lead programmer on Metal Gear Solid 5, Ground Zeroes, and The Phantom Pain. Notably though, after leaving Konami in 2015, he went to work at a newly formed studio, Artplay, where he served as designer and director on the beloved Castlevania spiritual successor, Bloodstained Ritual of the Night, the sequel to which is due to release later this year. Just 11 days before his passing, he posted one final message to Twitter that read, quote, "It seems like the limit is near. I can feel myself growing weaker day by day. Please love Bloodstained 2, which will be released in the future, and the games that I made," end quote. Studio co-founder, producer, and longtime friend Koji Igashari took to Twitter to pay tribute following Ida's passing. He said, quote, "Looking back, he supported me for over 20 years. He was someone who constantly thought about games, approaching development with a passion that burned like a flame. His passing is profoundly saddening, though knowing he is now free from suffering brings a sense of relief. Having run at full speed for so long, I hope he can finally rest in peace now," end quote. Turning to other news, and Ubisoft's strike in response to the company's huge reshuffling has ended, with no response from management. Our website team at thisweekinvideogames.com actually spoke to the unions, who say the strike ran from the 10th to the 12th of February and involved workers from across Ubisoft studios in France, Italy, and Canada, with one French newspaper confirming that at least 1,200 of Ubisoft's 3,800 French employees participated in the first day of the strike. Union and Ubisoft representative Clement Montigny told us that there were 5 active picket lines in France, with 200 people gathered at the company's Paris HQ and 70 to 80 people on the picket line at the Montpellier studio, which he says is a new record. He also stated that the union has called for Ubisoft to immediately overturn its return to office mandate, quote, "Because it makes no sense at all. You have people who have a small wage at Ubisoft. Those people, they need to pay the rent for their apartment or their home, which has raised a lot during the last 10 years. They need to pay for the fuel for their car when they come in, because sometimes they need to live 1 hour away from work because it's too expensive in the city center. That's true at Montpellier. It's even more true in Paris. Forcing people to come back to work, it's a way to fire people without implementing a proper plan, without bargaining with the unions," end quote. He goes on to say that they may relaunch a strike at a later date, and that they're, quote, "looking at every legal option we have to defend employees," end quote. By the way, that wasn't the only bad news for Ubisoft this week. According to a recent financial report for Q3, Ubisoft has said that they're expecting an operating loss of €1 billion for the fiscal year. This follows shortly after the announcement of a major company reset that saw the cancellation of 6 games, including the Prince of Persia Sands of Time remake, and a delay to an undisclosed title slated for this year, which we're guessing is the Black Flag remake. Ubisoft otherwise reported a 12% increase in bookings for the quarter, but yeah, with nothing due to release for a little while, it's going to be a very, very rough year ahead. In stark contrast, Korean developer and publisher Nexon is doing just fine and dandy. They recently published their financial results for FY25, where the company reported an eye-watering $3.1 billion US dollar equivalent in revenue, up just 6.5% from the previous year. Some of that success is owed to their recently published Arc Raiders, which, yeah, I often forget is a Nexon game actually. The company directly praised it for its, quote, strong retention and momentum, end quote, sharing that it's now sold 14 million units and that it, quote, validates Nexon's ability to create and sustain a global blockbuster new IP, end quote. Yeah, it turns out when you don't cram your game with like 6 different battle passes and gacha mechanics, your games actually stand a chance in Western markets. Shocker. According to Nexon, Arc Raiders hit a peak of 960,000 concurrent players in January, alongside roughly 6 million active weekly players to date. The company expects the game to, quote, sustain strong player engagement and sales momentum with monthly content drops and live events, end quote. And yeah, we've certainly already seen some of this with its free mini battle pass event thingies and that winter-themed update that saw maps snowed over, resulting in a novel mechanic where players need to stay warm. As such, the game continues to hit pretty damn impressive peak player numbers with a 24-hour peak of over 200,000 players at the time of writing on just Steam. Absolutely no signs that this game is slowing down anytime soon. Finally, one other game doing very well for itself is Mewgenics, the latest unhinged roguelite from the mind of Binding of Isaac creator Edmund McMillan. Tyler Glale, programmer and designer on Mewgenics, took to Twitter to announce that the game has now sold over 1 million copies just a week after its launch, and Alanea Analytics estimates that it's already the top new game in 2026 by copies sold. That success is very much echoed by its Steam player counts, where it's hit a peak of over 115,000 concurrent players, surpassing Hades 2 and nearly breaking a new record for roguelites, falling just shy of Megabonk's nearly 117,000 players. Still an incredible result and well deserved based on my 10 hours with the game. I'm actually trying to limit myself with this thing because it's dangerous and it will surely consume me if I let it. Also, in case you missed it, we actually had the pleasure of chatting to McMillan on the podcast this week. It was a really fun interview. In fact, some are saying it was like the best interview we've done since McMillan is just super chill and down to earth and doesn't spout PR bullshit. He's just like a real person who says real things. It was a really fantastic chat. So if you're interested in it, I really recommend checking it out. I'll leave a link to it below the like button. You know what else I'll leave a link to? Our website, thisweekinvideogames.com. You know what I said earlier about how our team spoke to the Ubisoft union? That's the kind of thing we do all the time because we want to make sure that we're doing more than just reporting what other people are reporting. So we're out there chasing down stories, speaking directly to developers both on and off the record, and diving deep into the discourse to shine new light on topics. We also have expert columnists like Innersloth community manager Victoria Tran, who this week turned in a fascinating piece where she spoke to game developers about how they come up with their music. She even spoke to Stardew Valley's Concerned Ape about it, plus like 5 other developers and composers. Just a really great piece that I think you'll enjoy. So if you want to check it out, head over to thisweekinvideogames.com to sign up as a supporter or to sign up for free to get access to our weekly newsletter. It's the best way to support the work that we do, so thank you to all of you who have signed up since we've launched. We really, truly do appreciate it. And with that, on with the video. So what got announced or delayed this week? Well, some called it the worst kept secret in indie games, but this week a little game called Titanium Court was finally officially announced by indie publisher Fellow Traveler after being nominated for 4 awards at next month's Independent Game Festival Awards, including Game of the Year. So what the heck is this thing? Well, you might have heard us talk about it a little on the latest episode of the Friends Per Second podcast, but it's part narrative game, part match 3 game, and part roguelike strategy management game, all wrapped up in this bizarre theming and aesthetic that's just weird and surreal. A few of us on the team have actually played the demo that's out now and are itching to play more of it, so do check it out. It really is worth it. PC only for this one at the moment. For something else that's a bit surreal, remember how 20 years ago we would dream of a crossover game that featured Snake from Metal Gear Solid and Sam Fisher from Splinter Cell? Well, it finally happened in Rainbow Six Siege. Yes, David Hayter is back in the mix now that Kojima and Kiefer are no longer working together, and Solid Snake is now in Siege as an operator. No cardboard box though, why even bother? Speaking of Konami adjacent things, Bloober Team. They've been running a big countdown starting from the beginning of this month, and it was ticking down to an announcement of some sort that ended up being Layers of Fear 3, a sequel to the studio's original psychological horror series that revolves around art and artists. No date or platforms confirmed just yet. Still waiting on that Silent Hill 1 remake, by the way, guys. Would love an update on that one when you get a second. Last little announcement now for a different crowd, the anime RPG crowd. We see you. In the early 2000s, Bandai Namco launched this hybrid RPG and anime series called Dot Hack, about weird shit going down inside of a futuristic MMO, and it spawned about a dozen games as well as films and novels and manga before eventually going quiet in around 2016. Well, Hack is back. Developer CyberConnect 2, who have since become best known for making anime arena fighters, have announced that they're reviving it with a new game called Dot Hack Zero, and notably they will be self-publishing this one because Bandai Namco apparently want nothing to do with it, but are letting them play with the property anyway. No other details for now. One cancellation of sorts this week, and that's thanks to the eagle-eyed folks on the PS3 subreddit. Turns out after announcing the Metal Gear Solid Master Collection with Metal Gear Solid 4 and Peace Walker, Konami has opted to delist the original PS3 versions from the PlayStation Store. Now, if you've already bought it, you can still access it, but they are no longer an option for purchase, which never feels like a great move. Alrighty, so what came out last week? Well, the most high-profile release was probably High on Life 2, the very talkative FPS from Squanch Games, which hasn't landed quite as hard as its predecessor, which is probably to be expected from a sophomore effort, but quite a few technical issues on PC as well, which isn't quite helping things. Things are mixed on Steam right now, largely owing to those technical issues. On OpenCritic, it's landed at a strong 76 regardless. Here's Morgan Park at PC Gamer, who gave it 75 out of 100, saying, quote, "I walk away from High on Life 2 championing what it stands for. It's fun, goofy, and unashamed of types of good-natured humor that have fallen out of fashion. Not every joke lands, and maybe the guns still talk too much, but it doesn't persist on gimmicks. High on Life 2 is a barrage of actionable ideas and decent bits attached to a decent FPS and a shaky yet technical foundation. It's a nasty, cool, and uneven dose of a game we just don't get enough of these days. A single-player FPS campaign with a beating heart," end quote. Austin's actually in the process of reviewing this one for us, so do look forward to his review going up over the weekend. Spoiler alert, he liked it, but yeah, those technical issues are pretty serious, so do be sure to make sure you can get a refund on this thing wherever you buy it in case you find the issues to be too numerous and or overwhelming. If you want a game that'll really get your heart beaten though, maybe check out Reanimal from Tarsier Studio, the folks who originally created Little Nightmares. Looks like they've done quite well this time around with an 82 on OpenCritic, just missing out on that mighty bracket, but still some very favorable reviews nonetheless. Eurogamer gave Reanimal 4 out of 5 stars, with Matt Wells writing, quote, "Reanimal is a game of phenomenal mood and artistry, and it builds on a familiar foundation in a way that feels like genuinely meaningful evolution, even if it might ultimately have benefited from being more radical, and while I won't pretend to fully understand the depth of its enigma, Tarsier's latest is a dark, violent, and grimly compelling journey through a remarkable vision of something like hell," end quote. Onto Paranorma site, The Mermaid's Curse now, which was announced just a couple of weeks ago at the Nintendo Direct. This landed very well with a mighty 85 on OpenCritic, and when it comes to niche genres and Japanese games, we often turn to Ed, who actually knew what this was when it showed up, and he's a good way through this one now, so here's what he has to say about it, quote, "I'm completely serious when I say that Paranorma Sight is one of the best, actually new things Square Enix has done in the past few years. It's a visual novel, but don't be put off by that. It's got a modern and mature take on the format that very much sets it apart from the heightened anime style the genre is always associated with. The art, characters, and writing are far more grounded and restrained. It respects your intelligence a lot more in its narrative and puzzles, and the interactive moments and more cinematic visual presentation actually make conversations engaging to sit through, even without voice acting. Paranorma Sight really sets a great bar for visual novels, so if you simply love a good, uneasy horror mystery story, I recommend checking out both The Mermaid's Curse and the previous game, The Seven Mysteries of Honjo," end quote. Moving on to another niche now, stealth games, with a look at Styx Blades of Greed. This one's earned itself a strong 75 on OpenCritic, with all the reviews so far landing in the same place. GamesRadar gave this one 4 out of 5 stars and sums it up like this, quote, "Styx Blades of Greed takes this dark fantasy stealth open world further with fantastic results, slotting together complex bases to create dense settings for sneaking that neatly expand in complexity as you progress. Some tech problems and guard simplicity can irritate, but the huge array of creative problem solving, from decoy clones to fireplace scuttling, makes this a world worth getting lost in," end quote. Alrighty, so what's coming out this week? Now, you know it's going to be a relatively quiet week when you see that not one, but 2 JRPG remasters are releasing in the same time frame, but of course, by this time next Friday, we'll all be talking about Resident Evil Requiem. So it's a good time to try to finish up whatever it is you're currently eating, because no way you're going to be able to cram a couple of casual JRPGs in there anyway. First up though, we missed mentioning it during our State of Play chat last week, but Never Prologue came out this week. This is a piece of DLC for the atmospheric combat platformer from Nomada Studio, which a lot of us here really love, so we wanted to shout it out. This apparently goes more into the relationship between Alba and Never, the wolf, but obviously a lot of question marks there if you've played that original game. PC, PS5, and Switch for this one. Moving on to our first JRPG remaster now, it's Ys X Proud Nordics, which should be out by the time you're watching this, and it's an updated version of the game that first came out in 2023. Man, Naughty Dog really kicked off a trend, didn't they? The original version is just called Ys X Nordics, so clearly there was some shame that was left behind or something. The new version adds new story stuff, abilities, and bosses, and I guess if you haven't played that, you might as well get this one. It comes out on PC, PS5, and Switch too. Jumping over to next week, and on Monday, Ubisoft is releasing Rainbow Six Mobile on iOS and Android, supposedly as a pretty fully featured version of the main game, but with mobile-first adjustments and shorter gameplay loops. This was first announced 4 years ago now, and was originally slated for a global launch last year. Free to play for this one. I wonder if, like every other mobile port that gets released, it lives for like 6 months before being sunset for no discernible reason. I guess we'll find out soon enough. Oh hey look, they're releasing Fallout 4 again. It's now coming to Switch 2 in its Anniversary Edition format. That went down about as well as a Deathclaw at a Vault birthday party. Still likely lots of new people coming to the series from the show, but when's that Fallout 3 and New Vegas remake coming, huh? Anyway, this one's out on Tuesday 24th. On Wednesday the 25th, we're finally getting a new Witcher game, sort of, in Reigns the Witcher. So what is this? Well, a long time ago, a Devolver studio named Nerial made this hybrid narrative and strategy management game called Reigns, which you controlled by swiping left and right on requests, like you were on Tinder or something. It's got really big for them, so there are a bunch of sequels and spin-offs, like a Game of Thrones one and a Three Kingdoms one. Now there's a Witcher one, where you play as Dandelion, telling a tale about the various pursuits of Geralt of Rivia. Apparently this is totally canon, though since you play as Dandelion, a lot of it will essentially just be in-world fanfiction. Maddie actually interviewed the devs behind this one a little while ago on the website, so that's available to read for supporters, so I'll leave a link to that below the like button if you're at all interested. This one's out on Steam as well as iOS and Android. Okay, this next one, I truly did not see this coming until we started putting this week's show together, which does not bode well for it. So good luck to them, I guess. On Thursday, February 26th, we have the early access release of Spellcasters Chronicles, which is that new free-to-play live service competitive MOBA from Quantic Dream. Yes, the same Quantic Dream that has until this point specialized in cinematic narrative games, but at some point got acquired by NetEase, and now they promise that this is what they really wanted to make all along. So yeah, the stick with this one is that it's a 3v3 thing, but there's some RTS stuff involved, like having to manually summon the units that typically automatically appear and fight down your lanes and all that sort of stuff. Kind of interesting. We previewed this one for the site last year, and there are enough ideas here to make it worth checking out, but obviously it has a lot going against it with the current state of everything going on in the world of live service games. How much juice is NetEase going to put behind this thing? I guess we'll find out. And just because I know it's going to happen, I'm going to say it. Please do not call it Concord 3, okay? We don't need to label every new upcoming live service game Concord 3, 6, 12, 22, because honestly, if we did that, we're going to run out of numbers real fast. Also, on the 26th are some notable ports. Tokyo Extreme Racer is the Japanese street racing game that has a long legacy, and this reboot did really well on Steam Early Access last year, and now it's coming to PS5. There's also a visual novel sequel called No Sleep for Konami Date, which is quite well regarded within that community. That's arriving on PlayStation and Xbox after being a PC and Switch exclusive. And ending on our second JRPG remaster is Tales of Berseria from Bandai Namco, which originally came out in 2016, which is still too recent if you ask me. The 16th mainline game in the Tales series. This one was quite well received back then, receiving more praise for its story than usual, mostly on account of its more interesting protagonist and cast of characters. PC, Switch, PlayStation, and Xbox Series consoles for this one. Alrighty, so Steam NextFest is kicking off next week, so we're about to be inundated with hundreds of demos and we can't possibly play them all, but thankfully some of them have been released early, so put this on your radar. This cool looking thing is called Phonopolis, and it's the next game from Amanita Design, the indie studio out of the Czech Republic, who you may know for them giving away literally their entire catalog on the Epic Games Store last year. They specialize in adventure games that look really unique and are bursting with charm, and this one is certainly no different. The big hook here is clearly the aesthetic. We've seen a few very cool stop motion animated games now. This one takes a slightly different approach. Phonopolis' world, characters, and props are all handmade and hand painted with real cardboard before being scanned into into the game engine and it just looks fantastic. Even the menu screen has this cool handmade vibe, and there's a really great little behind the scenes video showcasing how they do all this. They first announced this thing 3 years ago and it's slated for release sometime this year, so definitely give the demo a shot and get a little feast for your eyes. If you do like the look of it, we've left a link to it over on our Steam curator page, which also has links to all of the other Put This On Your Radar stuff we recently covered. I'll leave a link to all of that below the like button. Our feel-good story for the week is a quick one, but I couldn't resist. Last week we saw the reveal of Project Windless, a game based on a popular Korean fantasy novel series called The Bird Who Drinks the Tears. Well, it didn't take the internet long to get to work, because you just know that when a giant buff chicken is out there doing the filleting instead of being filleted, you are going to see some memes. For me, it kicked off in our Discord when Austin posted the first of many, Black Myth Wukong. Not bad, but I think we can do better. How about Cock of War? Oh yeah, now we're cooking with secret herbs and spices. Kokiro chicken fried twice doesn't exactly roll off the tongue, but my personal favorite has got to be Kentucky May Fry. We didn't get that DMC6 reveal at the showcase like many expected, so I guess we'll have to settle for this. Alright ladies and gents, that is the show for the week. Plenty to look forward to from us before the month is out. Austin's working on High on Life. I'm about to finish up my playthrough of Reanimal. We've got the Marathon Service Slam live next weekend, but before that, we've got a little game called Resident Evil. So like I said, heaps to look forward to both here and on the site this week in Videogames.com, so be sure to sign up over there if you're at all interested. But if you're all about that video content, then be sure to subscribe, ding the bell, and why not drop this video a like while you're at it, because we like likes, and we are not ashamed to admit it. Okay, thanks for stopping by, and a big thanks to this video sponsor, Raycon. Although it's summer here in the Southern Hemisphere, I always tune into the Winter Olympic Games to watch the best athletes in the world at the peak of their athleticism, especially the curling. I mean, look at those pants, what's not to love? That's not the only major sports competition this month though, and even though in Australia we play football with our actual feet, the Super Bowl is another chance to see the best players in their sport duke it out on the pitch or field or whatever you guys call it. If you're inspired by these groups of athletes to get into a fitness routine or train more consistently, audio that actually works while you move makes a huge difference, so you may be interested in these all-new Essential Open Earbuds from this video's sponsor, Raycon. The Raycon Essential Open Earbuds solves so many problems created by traditional earbuds. The biggest one for me is comfort. I don't know about you guys, but always having a piece of plastic jammed into my ear can start to feel a little uncomfortable after a while. The Essential Open Earbuds sit around and on top of your ear, and no word of a lie, sometimes I forget I'm even wearing them. The best use case though is exercise. There isn't a single pair of earbuds that stay in my ear when I'm jogging, but I don't need to worry about that with the Essential Open Earbuds because their design means they stay on no matter what I'm doing. Plus, I don't get so much sweat built up in my ear, but even if I did, the Essential Open Earbuds are IPX5 certified water resistant. Also, I play a lot of tennis, and lately I've been wearing these while I play because it lets me listen to music or a podcast while I'm hitting against a ball machine. And that is so good, I love that. The sound quality is crisp and clear, allowing me to enjoy music and podcasts while also being able to hear what's going on around me, and the battery life is excellent. 8 hours of continuous playback and a total of 36 hours of charge time with the charging case. These are what I keep in my sports bag now, or what I wear when I go out for a walk or a run. They're comfortable, reliable, flexible, and the perfect way to listen to music or podcasts while leading an active lifestyle. If you're looking for earbuds that move with you, whether you're commuting, working, or just living life, the Essential Open Earbuds are the way to go. You might even say that the Essential Open Earbuds are here to help you go for gold. So if you want to grab a pair as part of Raycon's Go for Gold sale, then scan the QR code on screen or visit buyraycon.com/skillupopen to get 15% off the Essential Open Earbuds. That price is strictly for a limited time, so do get in quick. That QR code is right there. Otherwise, it's buyraycon.com/skillupopen for 15% off the Essential Open Earbuds. Thanks Raycon for sponsoring the video, and thank you for watching it.